Doug Lesmerises along with Ari Wasserman here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And Ari, do you have thoughts about Ohio State as a college football playoff team?
Playoffs? Playoffs? Let's just see if they can win a game, Doug.
All is not lost for Ohio State with the news that Braxton Miller will miss the 2014 season, needing surgery again on his right throwing shoulder. But I think, Ari, you and I are in agreement that this is not a small thing for Ohio State, and this is not going to be the same team they were before Braxton Miller got hurt.
I've been looking at Twitter, listening to the radio, watching Sports Center, and all I keep hearing is how JT Barrett's going to come in and he's going to be a distributor, he's going to be a leader, and he's going to help Ohio State continue to compete for a Big Ten championship and go to the playoff. That is an interesting narrative to me because I'm not sure that that's what's going to happen. If it does happen, it'll be great for Ohio State and we'll report it, but I think we need to focus more on the detrimental loss that occurred for the Ohio State team today because they got significantly worse without Braxton Miller. So I'm not sure I want to talk about the playoff right now as much as what this means for Ohio State and what they need to do in the preseason to win games.
You know, this happens a lot with any kind of news, but again, in sort of interacting with fans in the chat we did today and in other places, you got a little bit of, oh no, it's 2011, when the Buckeyes went 6-7 when Terrell Pryor was gone and Braxton Miller was a freshman. And you got a decent amount of, everything's good. And as usual, I think it's in between. You know, I think when you say, is Ohio State okay? Is Ohio State going to be fine? I think it depends what you mean by fine. Fine to me is the same, that the expectations, the possibilities would be the same. I don't think they're the same. I don't think a horrible season is coming, but could this team win 10 games? Sure, they could win 10 games. I think that's certainly possible. I just don't think when you're already replacing 4 guys on the offensive line, you're already replacing Carlos Hyde and your leading receiver in Philly Brown. Braxton Miller is the most experienced and dynamic part of this offense. There are a lot of other question marks, and now, as much as people are saying good things about JT Barrett, quarterback goes from 2-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year to a guy who's never played a snap of college football. I just don't think that you can think of Ohio State the same way. I think Michigan State is now the favorite. I was picking Michigan State to win the Big Ten before this happened. But now I think you bring in games like Penn State, Virginia Tech, maybe Cincinnati. I know you have thought Navy has been dangerous the whole time. You know, Michigan, I think you bring in those games where, you know, they were going to be competitive, but I think when you have a young quarterback, you're more potentially apt to lose those kind of games. Not all of them, maybe one of them, maybe 2 of them. And I think that's the kind of season we might be talking about now.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're, like you said, it's like Jim Tressel always said, to borrow his, big adage, it's never as good as it seems, it's never as bad as it seems. And I think, like, right now, that's the case. But the question is now what kind of offense is this team going to be? Mm-hmm. Because, playoff and wins and losses and fine, that'll all determine itself. But the question is how is Ohio State going to attack offense this year? And, at the time being, it was a very run-oriented, quarterback-making plays-oriented offense. And I wrote a story a few weeks ago about how they wanted to get out wide and distribute it to some of their playmakers and whatnot. And I think that has to be the case more than ever now. Because you don't want to put too much pressure on a young guy like JT Barrett. You want to get it into the hands of Dontre Wilson and Jalen Marshall and guys that can make plays and do it for him. The question and the problem for Ohio State's offense, from my point of view, is that all the guys that we're talking about doing that haven't done it yet. So not only is JT Barrett going to be kind of a new kid on the block type of thing when he's going to Maryland and playing Virginia Tech and all that, everybody that needs to make plays for him is also in that same situation. So, and even the line. So when you look at Ohio State's offense in general, I think it might be kind of a tough situation for them. It might not look pretty right away, and it might take some time before they really start moving the ball if they ever do.
Most experienced guy, one of the most experienced guys on the offense, Devin Smith, he's a deep threat. JT Barrett, not quite the arm strength that Cardale Jones and Braxton Miller have. That's one of the things they've talked about. He is more of an accuracy, timing, good reads kind of quarterback. The question to me is, who scares a defense right now? When Braxton Miller plays, every snap he scares a defense because every snap he might escape a sack and run 50 yards. JT Barrett is just not that kind of player. Not many quarterbacks are that kind of player. And so who scares people? Maybe Dontre Wilson, maybe fast. Curtis Samuel, maybe. Ezekiel Elliott seems like he's going to be a good back. Hasn't really done it, coming off a wrist injury. Who scares them? Who do they have to plan for? That's a question. And when you have Braxton, he makes everybody else look better because you have to account for him. When you can come up and not be afraid of the quarterback run, when you maybe don't have to be afraid of the deep ball, it makes it easier to cover everybody else.
Why don't I take it a step further? Who scares them is a good question. Here's a better one. What's their bread and butter offensively now?
Right.
That's the thing that I want to know.
We know it's going to be diverse, but what do you rely on?
Third down and 4, what's the play call here? What do you know you can call over and over again, maybe in different ways, but who is your Carlos Hyde? Who is your guy, or who is your strategy or your playmaker or anybody that you know is going to get the yardage when you need it, and they don't have an answer to that question right now?
What's your 4th and 2 call? Last year in the Big Ten championship game, there was a little controversy because they called Braxton Miller when maybe some people thought they should have called Carlos Hyde. 2 good options. Now, we're just trying to be realistic. It's not over. Let's tell people what we know about JT Barrett so far. And I'm going to start with the story that Tom Herman told on signing day in 2013, talking about JT Barrett and his leadership, that when he was on a recruiting visit, James Clark and Dontre Wilson were also here. And JT Barrett got up and made a speech about coming to Ohio State that almost made Tom Herman choke up. It was so good. And he said, who does that? And that showed him what kind of person and player JT Barrett can be. And they've talked about his leadership every minute from then. And that, I think, is something that you're going to see. For a young guy, for a redshirt freshman, I don't know that he's going to panic, but he just hasn't done it.
Yeah, to me, sometimes I have a hard time of separating things like when you're talking about a player that nobody thinks is going to see the field unless something unexpected like today happened. When you talk about leadership, and it just seems like a generic thing that maybe a coach would say just because you have to say something nice about the guy when you get asked about him. But everybody I've talked to, dating back to when he was in high school, even his coach would tell me that leadership thing is a thing with him. I think people are drawn to him, and I think that is a huge plus, and maybe one of the many reasons, or maybe one of the few reasons he jumped in front of Cardale Jones, because people need to respond to him now.
Right.
Whether he's good or not, people need to believe, and he needs to believe that he is. And I think that's an important aspect of maybe why he's in the situation he's in right now.
So again, everything has changed for Ohio State with this news. It doesn't mean the season is over. It means we have a very interesting couple of days before we get to the opener against Navy on August 30th here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center along with Ari Wasserman. I'm Doug Lesmerises for cleveland.com.